So support towers are the only classification of tower that doesn't have an exclusive game mode. And for one, this is probably because they ran out of places to put exclusive game modes, and two, it's probably because support would be a pretty hard tower to do on some maps. I mean, good luck doing support only on Sanctuary or Bloody Puddles. However, despite the fact that it seems to be a pretty grave situation on most maps, I'm going to ask this question. Can you do a support-only chimps run? And on top of that, how difficult is it in fact? I will be answering both of those questions, but first let's discuss map choice. Now, because of my personal stipulation that I didn't want to use a hero during this challenge, it was a little difficult to find a map to do this on that wasn't a beginner map. The map I ended up going for was Streambed, and while there probably could have been a map that's slightly harder than this, I imagine that I'd still be using the same strategy, so I didn't really bother looking at too many other maps. Now, before I talk about what I actually did, I will say, with a hero, you are able to get this into advanced maps and whatnot, but to be honest, it's really not worth the effort because it's still basically the same strategy. And to be honest, there's no fun in that, in my opinion. So anyway, to start out with, we have to start with an engineer because there's really no other option. My first goal here was to get an engineer for every role that the engineer monkey can fulfill. I would want a foam engineer to get rid of camo, regrow, and lead balloons in the early game, sentry guns with the bottom path cross path simply for the stuns, and as well a sentry guns with the middle cross path for the mow-up damage. I also got a long life spike factory because we are going to be rushing permaspike. And when I say we're going to rush permaspike, I mean we're going to get it as fast as I possibly can. After I got Sentry Expert and Jungle Drums, I literally did not buy anything else until permaspike. And I did end up getting permaspike by round 61, which is great because it'll be vital for defeating round 63 and any other subsequent rounds before I get Sentry Champion. And to be honest, I could probably rename this video to Permaspike is Overpowered because this thing practically carried. While it wasn't the tower that got the most pops at the end, it really just carried in the mid-game and as well and made sure that nothing could possibly exit this map. And as previously stated, the next goal is of course Sentry Champion, because I mean, this is pretty much the best mob damage we're gonna get. And you can see in the clip where I get Sentry Champion here that I definitely could not have beat this round without Permaspike, which once again just says that Permaspike pretty much carried this game in a strange way. And now we have a lovely balance where Sentry Champion is doing the mow-up damage and Permaspike is doing the cleanup. Now after this, the choice of tower were pretty simple. I went for Primary Expertise and then Overclock. Primary Expertise because, well, to be honest, it's the only other really particularly good damage option other than Spiked Mines, and Spiked Mines is not my favorite, to say the least. And I also just wanted to use the village for something other than just jungle drums. And of course Overclock because I mean, if we're going to be limited to support towers, you might as well use them for actual support, right? And to be honest, after getting Sentry Champion, the game was kind of breezy, nothing too difficult. And really, that's kind of an issue with this challenge. I couldn't really get the difficulty much higher without having to use a hero, which is something I specifically did not want to do. But then the issue becomes that the challenge becomes a little easy just because the map itself is an easy map. But there's not much I could really have done about that. Unless I were to say start on round 1 or 3 instead of 6, or increase the starting cash, but that would be cheating, and I don't want to do that. All that aside, let's get to the last few rounds here. The scary round, round 95, was actually pretty easy with this strategy. I mean, Permaspike of course took care of most of it, but Sentry Champion was surprisingly pretty great at popping DDTs. Not to mention that Primary Expertise was of course there, doing a moderate amount of damage. And as you can imagine, the other two scary rounds, 98 and 99, were pretty much the same. Primary Expertise and Sentry Champion did most of the damage, and then Permaspike cleaned up pretty easy. And then finally for round 100, I got 2 Carpet of Spikes to help pop the bad itself, because the Permaspike, for as strong as it is, could not take a whole bad, even if Sentry Champion and Primary Expertise broke it down a bit. And then that was it. That was Support Only Chimps. And I gotta say, there are probably a few other ways to do this. You could probably somehow include XXL Trap, or Call to Arms, Home and Defense, because I didn't really get a chance to buy those in this game. And even without it here, this challenge was fairly easy. I mean, it's kind of unfair because there wasn't really many ways to start this challenge on a harder map, so it's kind of skewed. But I gotta say, this is probably the hardest X category chimps challenge. Because I mean, magic and primary only chimps aren't too bad, and I imagine that military only chimps would probably be kind of easy, kind of hard, depending on the map. But that's a topic for a different video, assuming I ever get around to it, maybe. And speaking of which, I do want to at some point redo my primary only chimps video, because to be honest, I'm not proud of it, and I could definitely do better now. Especially, I could do it on a much harder map, because I mean, Winter Park, really? I really should have known better, to be honest. And by the way, I'm pretty sure by the time I upload this, my sub count will have almost doubled since the last video, which is pretty darn insane. I usually don't like to talk about this stuff, but like, wow, I'm actually quite impressed with this growth. Although I must say, I'm not the biggest fan of the video that YouTube chose to show everyone. That primary only video makes me a little embarrassed. But anyway, I think that's all from me for today, so for now I bid you farewell.